Hi, Steve Gamache with a Chef Knives to Go quick look product video, and we are looking at the Shungo Damascus white number 2 Gyuto 240mm knife. This line of knives has a core steel of Shirogami or white paper number 2 Hitachi reactive carbon steel. The heat treat's about 61 to 62 Rockwell on that core steel, and the construction is an iron cladding over the top of that white number 2, and it does have a kind of a layered Damascus style look to the finish when you get to the grind. That's called a suminagashi finish, and you do have a kudauchi blacksmith finish over the top of that on the blade flat. So this is an all reactive blade, no stainless anywhere. The weight of the knife is 207 grams, 7.3 ounces, which is not very heavy considering the size of the blade. The blade length is around 245 on the edge and a little over 9.5 inches. Overall length right about 16 inches with this handle combination. The spine thickness, we'll get a closer look at it, but it's about 3.3 millimeters thick here, and then it has a really cool distal taper almost all the way down the blade, which is unusual for this style of knife. The blade height is about 54.4, so it's a tall blade here back at the heel and chin of the knife. Handle type is one of Chef Knives to Go semi-custom wooden handles with a tiger maple main part and a wenge ferrule. Sometimes they'll put and flip-flop those with wenge and a tiger maple ferrule. Circumference about 3 inches right at the junction here, and it's the ones on the site picture might have a thinner handle. With Mark switched them out for a bigger handle, but we'll get a closer look at the knife. Let's take a look. So here is the distal taper, so about 3.3 millimeters here. And then what I like about this blade, it just gradually starts to thin out and tapers down as you go till you get to a pretty thin tip with the grind of the blade, which is fairly generous. That helps lighten the blade and helps the performance quite a bit. This tip is pretty awesome. It goes through stuff exceedingly well, much better than I thought it would just looking at the knife. But once you see the geometry of the knife, you understand why it does that. Again, it's a high blade, or I should say a tall blade. The neck is fairly, the molto is fairly narrow, and you got a nice curve there, so there's loads of knuckle clearance. You will not have an issue with knuckle clearance in this blade. And fit and finish is very good. There's nothing I have to touch here sandpaper-wise. It's all smoothed out nicely. The blade is really ground nicely, too. Let's take a look at the profile. And given that this is a pretty tall knife, they've still got a bit of a flat spot at the heel area, and a nice gentle belly that flows real cool, really nice on the cutting board. But it's hard to illustrate here, but when you take a knife and sight down the blade road into something shiny like a light or a window, and you take a really good look at a really narrow angle, you can see if there's any waviness in the blade and how it's ground. And this is really smooth. There's not much in the way of waves or dips or bumps or anything in the grind. So they took their time on the grind on this knife. It is ground better than many knives that I have seen, exceeding this price class, this pricing group. So let's take a look at this on the board. So this knife has just a beautiful, gentle belly right into the heel. And it's super smooth. It's so smooth on the board. It just rolls right into that. Your flat spot is maybe about right there. Not exceptionally long, but it is a tall blade. Again, it's a great rocker. You can do some chopping with it. Push-pull glide cutting works well. It's pretty good, I'd say, all-around profile. It's not a super flat, push-cutting, chopping type knife, but it's a great all-around profile. Performance is very pleasantly exceeded my expectations on this knife. The way the grind works, you'll get a little bit of wedging in some ingredients like you would in many knives, but it flows really nicely through a lot of different types of products, and I was exceedingly impressed with this knife. The performance is outstanding. Let's see, balance point, I do need to point that out, is right about there, a little bit in front of a pinch grip. A heavier handle would offset that more and bring the balance point back. Let's see, out of the box edge, I'll give it maybe a 4 or 5. It was okay. It'll get much, much sharper. It's a great white number 2 steel, so it doesn't take much to get this thing screaming sharp. And so there we have just an impressive kudauchi white number 2 blade, the Shungo Damascus white number 2 Gyuto 240mm knife.